UFOs. UFO stands for Unidentified Flying Object. Although many people associate this term with aliens or spaceships, it can refer to any unknown object seen in the atmosphere. Many people believe that UFO sightings began in modern times, but thousands of reports of extraordinary lights and mysterious objects in the sky have been documented around the world since antiquity. One of the earliest sightings was in the 15th century BCE in Egypt, where observers reported foul-smelling circles of fire and disks in the sky. Centuries later, in 1516 CE in Nuremberg, Germany, sightings of more than 200 UFOs of differing shapes, including cylinders, spheres, and spinning disks, were reported. The most interesting part of UFO history began in the mid-20th century. During World War II, fighter pilots reported many luminescent and cylindrical UFOs at high altitudes. Sightings of these objects were reported by both airplane pilots and high-ranking intelligence officials. Interestingly enough, both the Allies and the Germans recounted such occurrences. At first, they both thought that these objects were new weapons made by their enemies. However, when they realized that the other side was seeing them too, they concluded that these sightings were UFOs. Both the British and Germans created committees to investigate. Ultimately, it was determined that these UFOs, nicknamed Foo Fighters, were not man-made. No conclusive alternative explanations were forthcoming at the time. In the late 1940s, following World War II, the flying saucer era began. In 1947, a man named Kenneth Arnold reported seeing 9 silvery circular objects in the sky. He told his story to many people, including the press. He eventually wrote a book titled The Coming of the Saucers. In it, he described the UFOs as flying saucers because they were shaped like large china cup saucers. After the book's release, more and more people reported UFO sightings. Previously, anyone who reported a UFO had been considered a liar or a lunatic. However, because authorities were receiving so many reports, some with photographic evidence, they decided to set up a committee called Project Blue Book to investigate these sightings. In 1947, the Roswell crash occurred and eventually became the most famous UFO case in U.S. history. In early July that year, an object crashed onto a sheep ranch near Roswell, New Mexico. All the pieces of the fallen object were collected by members of the U.S. Air Force stationed at Roswell Army Airfield. Later in the day, the commander of the base informed the press that the remains of a flying disc had been recovered. This news spread worldwide in a matter of hours. Strangely, a few hours after the press release, the commanding general of the 8th Air Force issued a second press release asserting that the remains were from a common weather balloon. This retraction caused a lot of controversy. There were eyewitnesses, including the sheep rancher and an Air Force major, who saw many items they believed to be of unknown origin and made of strange material. Some even claimed to have caught sight of the bodies of non-humanoid organisms. Despite this incident and continued UFO sightings, the government disbanded the Project Blue Book Committee in 1969 due to the lack of concrete evidence. The U.S. Air Force conducted an investigation in the 1990s and released reports that reaffirmed the wreckage was a weather balloon from Project Mogul, a top-secret program for the detection of Soviet nuclear devices concealed in weather balloons. Nonetheless, many people presume such reports are deliberate disinformation and still think the government is suppressing the truth of what they collected from the Roswell crash and of other unexplained sightings and incidents. Over the years, UFO sightings have continued to be reported by people all over the world, including former U.S. President Jimmy Carter, NASA engineers, and Japanese businessmen. In fact, it is estimated that every 3 minutes there is a UFO sighting somewhere on the planet.